Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of our live exploration with Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. My name is Joe Grabowski from Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, and I'll be one of your hosts for today. For those who are new to Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, we're all about bringing science, exploration, adventure, and conservation live into classrooms across North America and beyond. Starting in early September, we'll be broadcasting up to 30 to 50 live events for classrooms, talking to scientists, to explorers, to adventurers, and conservationists all over the world, sharing their adventures. So the last couple of days have been really awesome as we've teamed up with NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries and the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute to explore the biology and history of the wrecks of the Portland and the mystery coal schooner. And we're excited for one final exploration for today. So I'm going to turn things over now to Hannah McDonald, Education Specialist with NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, and we will let her take over. Hey, Hannah, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Joe. Thank you. And welcome to all of the viewers. As Joe was mentioning, we are going to explore Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary live today. This program is about the case of the mystery schooner, identifying an unknown shipwreck in Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. I'm Hannah McDonald, like Joe said, Education Specialist for NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, and today I'm located at the Inner Space Center at the University of Rhode Island. You'll see me on screen today, as well as the research team located in Scituate, Massachusetts, also headquarters for Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. You will also see on screen some underwater footage coming from a remotely operated vehicle. Now, 2 days ago, the weather was perfect for the ROV to be streaming in live. That means in real time from the seafloor to programs like this. But unfortunately today, the weather has brought our team in. These were the seas they were seeing earlier this week that brought them back to shore. They tried to make it out this morning, but just returned back to dock because weather does not seem great. I also want to acknowledge another weather disaster that's happening in the United States in the Gulf of Mexico with Hurricane Laura, and send well wishes to those being impacted there. And I hope that those viewers and those people are all staying very safe from Hurricane Laura. That being said, our normal model that includes the live feed beaming in from the seafloor to the scientists on land and to audiences like you is called telepresence. Now, this model has been allowing us to explore the ocean safely during this national health crisis. Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries are leaders in ocean science and ocean exploration. They're committed to that mission of exploring the ocean while also ensuring the safety and health of their staff, research partners, and everybody's families. I'm here at Mission Control in the Inner Space Center all by myself. I have my mask for when I'm interacting with the production team, but for this program, I'm able to share my smile with you. The research team in Scituate, Massachusetts, they're all far apart from one another at an outdoor location, so they're also able to share their smiles with you. Our marine technology team may appear on camera together, and when they do, they'll be wearing their masks. This ensures that the program is flowing smoothly for all of us, and we have a very interactive dialogue with all of you. I've mentioned all of you being brought into this program as well. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to Joe to let us know where some of our viewers are coming from. And I also want you to type in the chat box if you're on YouTube or Facebook where you're coming in from too. We'll return to those after the intro video. But Joe, do you have any groups you know of?
Absolutely. We've got some coast-to-coast action today. We've got groups hanging out with us in Richmond, Virginia, in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Let's see. We've got Portland, Oregon, Tucson, Arizona, New Hampshire, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, San Francisco, California, Denver, Colorado. So keep making those introductions so we know who's tuning in with us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have such a far reach. That's great that you're all exploring Stellwagen Bank with us today. You're going to learn a little bit more about this year's project in this next video.
842 square miles, up to 600 feet deep, the final resting place of hundreds of shipwrecks, and one of the top 10 whale watching destinations in the world. Located 25 miles off Boston, Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary is home to a rich assortment of marine life, including Atlantic cod, haddock, flounder, bluefin tuna, and many species of whales, including the critically endangered North Atlantic right whale. Stellwagen Bank also contains vast numbers of shipwrecks, ranging from wooden sailing ships to modern fishing trawlers. These wrecks are both windows into the past and important habitats for marine life. Stellwagen Bank Sanctuary is one of 16 marine protected areas within the National Marine Sanctuary System, a network of more than 600,000 square miles of underwater parks. Managed by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the sanctuaries promote responsible, sustainable use of ocean and Great Lakes resources. To foster the public's connection with the ocean, NOAA awarded funding to Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, often referred to as WHOI, to conduct state-of-the-art research. Based on nearby Cape Cod, WHOI is the world's oldest and largest nonprofit ocean research and education institution. In 2019, tools and technologies pioneered by WHOI and their partner, Marine Imaging Technologies, let us share high-resolution images and interact with viewers in real time. This year, those same remote tools allow us to carry on our work during the pandemic. In early March, we added innovative microwave technology that beams data to shore, providing faster communication and better images. And we adapted our research model to include a smaller crew at sea and broad distribution to partners on land. COVID-19 has changed many aspects of our lives. But with careful preparation, social distancing, and technology, we can safely continue researching the ocean floor and sharing our discoveries in real time with you.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that brief introduction and sneak peek into Stellwagen Bank. You are going to learn so much more throughout this program. And thanks for typing in where you're coming from. This is also where you're going to address the science team when you have questions or comments for them. But we, in addition to all of the places that Joe mentioned, have people viewing from North Carolina, New Hampshire, and also California. And I wanted to highlight viewers from California. There are 4 national marine sanctuaries in California for you to visit yourselves. That being said, we are going to turn it over to Ben Heskell, Deputy Superintendent of Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, to talk about this mystery schooner. Ben?
Hey, good morning, Hannah. Hope you're doing well, and good morning to everybody out there. It's quite early on the West Coast, but thanks for joining us. So I'm standing here on the back deck of the Marine Operations Center in Scituate, Massachusetts, on beautiful Scituate Harbor. And behind me was the research vessel Catapult that made a valiant attempt this morning to get out to the site of the mystery coal schooner, which is the topic of our program today. But when they got out there, the waves were just too big for them to safely conduct any remotely operated vehicle dives, so they just returned. So we have some excellent imagery from a few days ago that we'll share with you, but today we are discussing this mystery coal schooner, and it's one of many schooners that historic schooners that sunk in the sanctuary over the last several centuries, actually. So these coal schooners were constant visitors to the sanctuary because New England needed energy for powering the factories up here, for heating homes, for powering trains that needed the coal. We have large and small coal schooners, sometimes called colliers, and they would transport, the larger ones would transport coal from the mid-Atlantic up to New England. And then the smaller coal schooners would be more regionally based and locally transporting coal within New England. One of the most dramatic images that you'll ever see of a shipwreck comes from Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, and it is of these two gigantic coal schooners that collided. They now sit locked at the bow, upright on the sea floor within the Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. They were both loaded with 3,000 tons of coal each. And in 1912, in December, they were actually racing each other to get into Boston to unload their coal first and get a better price. Well, it didn't work out so well, and they collided and sank like stones. So this is what they look like now on the sea floor. One was the largest four-master ever built, and the other is a similarly sized five-master. So the Louise B. Crary and the Frank A. Palmer were very examples of very large colliers that we have. But today's program is highlighting a much smaller coal schooner, like I said, sort of a regional coal schooner, whose name we don't know, and that's what we're trying to determine. It's really important for us to research these historic shipwrecks because they tell us about our maritime past and what society was like in the late 19th, early 20th century, and how we use tools and technology to get by, and how we interacted with each other. And of course, coal was an important source of energy back then. So these shipwrecks, we learn something new every time we find and investigate a shipwreck. And they really serve as time capsules of our past. So it's really fascinating. You'll hear more about this from our project archaeologist in a minute. So I guess with that, Hannah, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Ben. You shared a great story tied to many different images taken from incredible marine technology. This now turns us to a time for our audience to type in a question for our marine technology team about the devices and the resources they're using to explore the sea floor. To give you a little bit of an insight on what we've been using during this project, here's a sneak peek video about some of the technology.
Deep sea research and exploration are completely dependent on technology to go where humans can't. At Stellwagen Bank, we use a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, named Pixel to take pictures and video around shipwrecks. Pixel is relatively small, a fraction the size of deep sea ROVs. But sometimes we need something even smaller to advance our scientific goals: a penetration vehicle. This year, Marine Imaging Technologies built one, the Portland Penetration Explorer, or PPE, designed to go inside shipwrecks. PPE hitches a ride to the wreck on Pixel, then flies off and explores places even Pixel can't go. Looking inside the Portland helps us gather more information about her final moments. PPE's wide-angle, low-light 4K camera captures images from deep inside, where light is often scarce. These same images will let us build a future VR experience based around the Portland. One of our biggest technological changes this year is not underwater, but in air. Telepresence typically involves broadcasting via satellite, or VSAT. But VSAT equipment is large, heavy, costly, and poorly suited to small vessels. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we're operating with a reduced crew on a much smaller boat, the Catapult. We needed a solution that provided real-time communication to partners on land, but that Catapult could still fit and operate. So we partnered with AV Watch, who provide high bandwidth communications for the US Coast Guard, Air Force, and Navy. They pioneered a new way of using microwave broadcast technology, pairing small, stabilized transmitters at sea with equally small receivers on land, or even on a plane. Their technologies provide high bandwidth data at a fraction of VSAT's cost, letting us send multiple real-time video feeds to our team ashore and helping everyone stay safe.
I hope you enjoyed learning more about the technology that brings us all together today. We have time for a question, Joe. Has your audience submitted any questions about marine technology to send to both Evan and Mike, our marine technology team?
Absolutely. So first of all, Evan and Mike, it's great to see you. I know you just came in right off of the Catapult, so thanks so much for that. Sorry, the weather wasn't cooperating today, but we do definitely have a question here. This is from Sunil, and we saw the video of the technology. We saw what it can do, what Pixel can do, as well as Pixel's companion. But what are some challenges or drawbacks to using some of this technology?
I guess where to start. Everything has a pro and a con, of course. And with Pixel and PPE, like we alluded to in the video, we're heavily invested and based in a small boat operation in order to help keep costs down and just the footprint. But of course, when you get into really small boats and whatnot, you're much more susceptible to issues with weather. So we've been working with that all summer. It's not something you can really fight. It's just something you have to deal with and work with. I guess, and one of the other things that is probably worth mentioning is that on a small vehicle like Pixel and an even smaller one like PPE, we have big currents out there that we're always fighting. And as good as Mike is at designing and piloting, when you're sitting out there in a 2.5 to 3 knot current sometimes, there's just not much you can do with a small vehicle, and sometimes even with a big vehicle. But I know that those are some of the challenges that I, at least are, for me.
Yeah, exactly like Evan said, one of the biggest challenges with small vehicles like this is the current that we see on the shipwrecks. And so we're often timing things when we're maneuvering around the site based on that current. So we'll pick a side of the wreck that gives us a little bit of a lee, maybe protects us a little bit from the current. We try to stay in sight of what we want to do. Sometimes we struggle really hard and get up one side of the site and then just let the current push us down and just kind of float down nice and stable as best we can. And that's kind of one of the biggest challenges. This is staying on the site when the currents really start picking up, especially with PPE out there as well. When you got the two of them trying to fight together to stay with each other and stay in sight of each other, it can be a challenge sometimes. It can be quite interesting.
Yeah, one of the definitely the most salient points of that whole thing, though, is that when you are fighting the current, the ability to get good imagery is really it's really stressed. It's compromised, and if you look at a lot of the stuff, you'll notice that it has often has a little bit of a bob and a weave to it. It's sort of like a boxer. But most of it is incredibly stable, and that's due mostly to Mike here, who's an exceptionally experienced pilot and just really good at running these vehicles.
Thank you so much, Evan and Mike. I'm sure we'll turn back to you during the question and answer time, as people will have so many more questions about the marine technology being used. And I'm really glad you made it back to shore safely this morning. We're now going to turn it over to Dr. Kirsten Meyer-Kaiser to talk to us about another aspect of this project. She studies the biology of the sea floor. Good morning, Kirsten.
Hi, Hannah. Anytime we approach a new site on the seafloor for exploration, it's always a really exciting experience for me. And that was definitely the case this summer with the Mystery Coal Schooner. It was a site that I had never seen before. And so as we pulled up to the wreck for the very first time with the ROV, the first question in my mind is just, what is there? That basic first level question. And in the case of the coal schooner, I can say that there's actually a surprisingly low amount of colonization compared to other wrecks in the sanctuary. The hull of the ship is actually covered in copper sheathing, which is toxic to marine organisms. So they can't settle on that surface like they might otherwise be able to on other substances. And the organisms don't actually colonize the coal at a high level either. There's coal all on the inside of the wreck and also on the outside of the hull on both sides. It's kind of sitting on a pile of its own cargo. I still was able to observe some sponges and some anemones and some fish around the wreck, but those unique characteristics of the coal and the copper meant that this was actually pretty low colonization. The organisms are largely restricted to the wooden portions of the wreck, such as wooden knees or some of the debris that's around it. But identifying species is a lot of fun for me. And going into the wreck, usually I can tell what things are just by eye, based on previous experience or photographic identification guides that I have with me. But every once in a while, we'll get a species that's really challenging to identify visually. So for that, I need to collect a physical specimen. And this summer, we had the opportunity to do that. We went to a natural hard-bottom boulder reef site so that we could do our collections there instead of risking any damage to one of the shipwrecks. And so we went there with Pixel with custom-built suction samplers on Pixel that were able to collect a sea squirt and a sponge specimen for me. I preserved them on the boat, and then I took them back to my lab at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution for dissection and analysis. Using a microscope, I was able to cut them apart, compare some of their features to published taxonomic keys, and in the end, I was able to identify the sea squirt to genus and the sponge to species, which was really exciting to make those discoveries from the Mystery Coal Schooner. So we have a lot of great work that's been going on this summer, and with that, I'll hand it back to you, Hannah.
Thanks, Kirsten. It's great to hear about the adaptations that the marine tech team could make for your research. And it shows how all of these different fields are involved in this project. That brings me to the next point. Who I'm going to introduce you to next is a maritime archaeologist, Dr. Kelvin Myers. He's going to tell us a little bit more about the maritime archaeology on the Mystery Schooner.
Hey, Hannah, thank you very much, and welcome to everybody. I really appreciate it. And I want to give a big welcome to our ROV and boat crew who came back safely. One thing I'd like to mention is everything that we've done this year is safety first, whether COVID precautions or realizing that scientific data sometimes can wait, such as shipwrecks that have been there for hundreds of years. And one thing we say in the field of maritime archaeology, it's for every hour that you're out doing the work, you have 3 to 5 hours back in the lab trying to figure this out. So you're going to see some video here of the work we've already done, and I'm challenging any students, keen-eyed, eagle-eyed students out there who might help us find a clue to this puzzle of what this mystery schooner is. We get asked all the time, what's the identity of a shipwreck? And that can be very difficult. And we have certain clues or artifacts that we try to work with. So this year, when we went down, the first thing we saw was right at the front of the ship, or the bow, was called a stem, or a stem post. This is board, and it had numbers. Now, most of the time, these numbers are water lines to show where the boat sits under load in the water, and maybe that's what it is, but it had a unique numbering pattern, 989. And so you know that's not a natural kind of order. So maybe this is a diagnostic feature. Maybe it's a license plate. We don't know. It's part of this as we go through it. I heard Kristen talk about the copper sheathing. Very interesting. It has this yellowish kind of hue, greenish yellow, and I was able to reach out to experts in North Carolina as well as in Australia who are experts in copper sheathing, and they gave me a lot of great resources and literature about this type called Munn's metal, which is really an alloy of 60% copper and 40% zinc, and it just helps kind of reduce the cost but still be effective, as Kirsten noted, over 100 years possibly of being underwater and not a lot of life forms for that on that. So that's exciting, and sometimes I call it archaeology where history meets science, the ultimate meristem kind of program. It's really fun to do. As we go back through, we see other artifacts that come out. This looks like a harpoon, almost like a little torpedo, and we would see fins coming off of it and a little V stabilizer. This actually is a taffrail log. I mean, it's a speed log that they kind of throw over the stern of the vessel, and they'd be able to calculate how fast they were going. It had little mechanical gauges in there as well. It helps us date the wreck. And through Pixel, we swung around the back, and at the back of the boat at the stern, we found some evidence of the crew's quarters, maybe the captain's quarters, where there was a toilet bowl. And if we were out there today, we would ask Pixel to get a little close to see what we could find. And maybe some diagnostic features with that. I've reached out to maritime engineers out in Seattle who actually have experience working on historic vessels from the early 20th century. So you never know who you're going to talk to. And education is all about reaching out and maximizing your resources in an interdisciplinary way. And one of the biggest artifacts is the artifact that is the most abundant, the coal. It was a coal schooner. And what can coal tell you? Well, there was different types. There was kind of a low-grade coal called bituminous, and most of the schooners were carrying that. There was another type of coal called hard coal or anthracite, and I have an example here that is not from the wreck, but Deputy Superintendent Ben Haskell provided to me just kind of as a visual aid. If this is the type of coal that's on board the ship, then maybe we have a possible candidate, a hypothesis, a ship called the Modoc, which was built in 1882 and then sank in 1908 under a heavy, or as the newspaper reports call it, nasty seas. For 12 hours, the crew of 5 fought against these seas. And fortunately, our guys were smart and came back before they had to fight against these seas, and so always safety first with that. But the Modoc's crew, one of the stories, they had a dog. Yesterday was National Dog Day, and they had a beagle on board, and they thought maybe this dog was bad luck, but I refuse to think any dog is bad luck. And I go the other way, because the captain, when he realized the ship wasn't going to make it, climbed up and put up a distress flag, and soon it was rescued by another ship, Rob Roy. So I think the dog helped save their lives. They made it back. The ship, the Modoc, was lost. Is this our mystery schooner? Well, we don't like to assign identities until we have more evidence. It's a hypothesis, that's all, but we have to have other possibilities out there, and we'll keep working. And with the technology that we have, and the team that we have, and the interest that is out there, there's good chances maybe we'll figure it out. So thank you very much, and Hannah, back to you.
Thank you so much, Calvin. And as you mentioned, our viewers get to see some underwater footage of this mystery schooner. So if you notice something that you might think is a great detail that might lead to an identification of this schooner, please feel free to type it into the comments box. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Joe, as we're also going to start our question and answer time, where we get to interact with the entire research team, including Ben Haskell, Calvin, Kirsten, Evan, and Mike. So questions across the board are welcome. And Joe, let's take it away.
All right, excellent. Well, thanks to everybody for another great session to get us started. And I'm going to jump right in, maybe if Calvin's still close by. Rachel's wondering about, more next steps to identify the mystery schooner. If you could get out right now, what would you be looking at? What are you hoping to see?
So one artifact I kind of went over that you might have seen was this long brass kind of cylindrical piece, and it's beautiful. It's actually a telescope, and it had a cap on there. And maybe there was the captain's name engraved in there. Or as I was mentioning, that toilet bowl, there's different designs and different fashions through the day, and we call this kind of a typology. And so get some pictures, and you might have some what we would call a maker's mark, or the production that company that made it. There was also, we've noticed in records from 2002, 2003, when they first found it and did some preliminary photographs, there were some plates and dishes and bottles that when we were out there, we didn't see. And this is likely due to something called site formation. So I would be asking our crew to really go areas that we've identified as possible places where this could move. And each little artifact provides us a possible date. And that helps close things in. The other aspect is when we come back from the field, we're going to do a lot of historical research. We go to the library, we look up things, we look at historic photographs, we contact historical societies, and I reach out and I meet a lot of interesting people who are always very friendly and willing to help. So part of this is using people today and try to kind of create a network of investigators out there. And what's one of the exciting parts about this is there might be an expert in ship construction out there watching right now who might call in, and that's happened too. So these are some of the tools that we use, but usually takes some time and a lot of legwork and persistence.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Rachel, for sending in that question. We're going to shift a little bit to biology now. We can go back to Kirsten. And so this, actually, I do want to give a quick shout out. We've got a little international flair today. We've got some families joining in and students from Ontario, Canada, who are joining us, as well as we have some viewers from India that are joining us today. And I do want to make sure I give a shout out to Chloe and Paxton from Waterloo, Ontario. They've been here all 3 days, loving the exploration of Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. But let's jump to the biology question. This is from Akash in India. And he was really curious about the organisms and the toxins from the copper. Do the organisms detect that before they settle, or if they settle, it's too late for them, they're in big trouble?
Yeah, so the process of larval settlement is really, really fascinating because organisms that are sessile invertebrates that live in one place attached to a surface for their whole adult life, most of them reproduce by a pelagic larval phase. This means that they send their babies up into the water column, they disperse in ocean currents, and they find new habitats to settle on for themselves. So as a larva is approaching a wreck, or any other settlement habitat, it's using a number of cues to tell where it is. Some of them use turbulence. So when you approach a structure where you could potentially settle, the water's going to be more turbid just because there's something there, and so it's getting all mixed around. They use that as a cue to know that there's a structure there. Then as they get closer, they can sense chemical cues. For example, if there are adults of the same species already living in that habitat, then the chemicals that those adults are releasing can serve as a cue for that larva to know that there's adults here. This is a good habitat where they can survive, and they can use that as a settlement cue. In terms of the copper, our understanding of to what extent a larva can reject a settlement habitat, that varies by species. So some organisms, for example, like clams and mussels, mollusks, bivalves, can settle down, so the larva swims down to the habitat, and if it can sense that this is not a good place to settle, then it can actually turn around and pull itself back off and move off into the water column. Usually they drift along the bottom until they find a place that's really well suited to them. Some of them can crawl along the substrate, and so there are different strategies. But if a larva accidentally settles on that copper, it's not necessarily done for. It could pick up and move on to try and find a better habitat for settlement.
Awesome. Great question, Akash. Thanks for joining us live from India today. So I think these next couple questions would be awesome for Mike and Evan. They're a little bit of technical questions about the ROVs. So let me pop the first one in here. We've got Andres hanging out with us. He's 10 years old, and he's really curious about the process of going from an idea to building something like Pixel or PPE. You guys talk a little bit about that process?
Yes, that's a great question. and Pixel, PPE, a lot of it actually started with jobs that we had done over the years where we kept getting asked to put cameras onto a vehicle. And when you put them onto a vehicle, okay, it works, it may get the job done, but it's not elegant, and it's definitely not...
always a compromise.
Yeah, it's always a compromise. So what we decided to do was we came up with the idea of building the ROV around the cameras themselves. And, we had a lot of time. At that point, Mike and I were doing a lot of work over in the Pacific, and so we had a lot of plane rides. And there were many different ideas. And eventually it sort of settled into, what we see today. But one of the big criteria we had is that we really wanted to build something that was engaging and that was like a character, almost like a cartoon character. And that was one of the big design parameters behind Pixel. I'll let Mike talk.
So a lot of the process, it took about, 5 years, I guess, from the time we first decided we'd start doing it till where we are now. In that process, some of that was just funding because we self-funded it ourselves and scrounging up the money and the parts and the pieces here and there and coming up with a concept. And beyond that, like Evan said, we really wanted it to be a character, not just the camera or the tool. We wanted it to also look good if it was in front of the camera, if something else was looking at it. Because often we do projects where there's other divers in the water or there might be another vehicle that's filming it, things like that. So we wanted it to look nice. We wanted it to be something that people could associate with, see it as a character, find it friendly, things like that. And then, we did the same process with PPE, much faster. We built it in a lot faster period of time just because it's a smaller vehicle. But we wanted it also to be a little character, a little friend for Pixel.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of like it too because, we have, we'd love to do, cartoons and comics and things like that, stories around Pixel. And there's a really cool blending of sort of reality, the real life thing, and what we can create sort of, within a comic or within a storyline. And it's fun. We spend many nights on the boat coming up with different stories for Pixel and all sorts of trouble that Pixel and Taz can get into.
All right, very cool. I do want to give a quick shout out to Alec, who's joining us from Tokyo, Japan. Alec just said hi now. But sticking with Mike and Evan, we have another question. You guys, it sounds like you found the pieces, you self-funded to build Pixel. What advice would you give to, people out there who might want to try their hand at maybe creating their own machine or maybe options that can be used by, citizen scientists that are a little more affordable?
I guess I can start there. So anybody who's interested in doing this, there's actually a lot of, inexpensive pieces and parts that you can get online, various companies that are making different parts for ROVs. Sometimes it's not just for an ROV, it could be for an aerial vehicle, a quadcopter. You can use some of those parts, in particular software, things like that. You can turn around and, blend that into your system of what you want to use. For a system like we did with Pixel and PPE, there's a substantial financial aspect to that, but if you just want to get started and home build something, there's a lot of inexpensive items out there. And then we've mentioned yesterday that if anybody is interested in some, getting some guidance on how to do that or what might be out there, feel free to contact Evan or myself at Marine Imaging. We'd be happy to help you out, point you in a direction, help you find what you want to look for.
One of the things that we literally built almost the entire sampling system, over the course of a couple of days out of parts from the hardware store in Home Depot, and it was very small and effective, and there's plenty of things you can get just literally at the hardware store, from PVC and glue. I mean, if you're just starting out, you're going to go shallow. You're going to probably go to a pool or go to a lake. You're not immediately going to go to 1,000 feet. So, you can take regular PVC tubes and like a Schedule 80, I think. I mean, we've taken those down 500-600 feet. So I've also had lesser ones blow up in my face. So make sure you use good PVC. But things happen. So
that's only if you're going deep, they blow up.
Exactly, yeah. And usually it's because you're diving, and there's a whole other story behind that. But anyway.
All right, very cool. Great questions coming in about the ROVs and how to use them. So very cool. So this one might slide. Even Hannah might be able to jump on this one for us too. We've got Connie joining us from Jubilee in North Carolina, and she's really curious. We've met some of the crew members. How many members make up this team that are out there right now for this exploration?
Right, you have met much of the crew that's been operating this summer. And as we've mentioned in some of the videos, we're operating at a smaller scale due to the pandemic to keep this ocean exploration safe. But so you've met Evan and Mike on the marine technology team, Kirsten leads biology, and Kelvin leads marine technology. So Evan, I believe that you have crew on Catapult. Do you want to briefly introduce them and tell us how that goes down?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we've limited the number of folks that we could have on the Catapult to 5 due to the pandemic. And while we've been operating this week, there have been 4 of us out there. We have Captain David Allman, and David's a lot more than just the captain. He works with us at Marine Imaging and is responsible for all sorts of operations and whatnot. And we had Matt Weeks out with us, and Matt is actually a commercial fisherman and does a lot of clamming, oystering, etc. And he's just very handy to have on a boat, and is just an excellent seaman. So we had him out with us, and it's been great. When during the summer when we were operating, it was Mike, myself, David, Calvin, and Kirsten, and it's a small boat, and everybody does everything. And I can say that with just the 4 of us out there, yes, we could get the job done, but it was a lot easier having that 5th person. So, Calvin and Kirsten were both very sorely missed.
And beyond them, we also have some technical staff that help us out. Jeremy Paulus is an exceptional mechanical engineer that works with us a lot. Mike McCarthy is a good buddy of ours, mechanical guy, electrical guy. And they're part of our team as well that developed Pixel and worked with PPE and other systems that we do.
And one other thing to just keep in mind too is that we're not really utilizing it today, but the team from AV Watch, they had been coming out with us this whole winter, starting in February. They were out for 3 or 4 different trips to help tune in both the system that we have on the boat, and we have antennas set up 30 miles away down in P-Town on the Monument, and to test this stuff out, they would put up planes. We would communicate from the boat to the plane to the airport, back to the Monument, and it's kind of it's been a real adventure, and it's been great working with so many different people. And of course, like Hannah alluded to, all the folks down at ISC, and it's everything, everybody and everything coming together. It's really nice.
Right, I was going to mention the team doesn't just stop there. We have the communications and production team here at the Inner Space Center, Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and not to forget the historians involved that Ben Haskell has brought into this project to help us identify the mystery schooner and give us more information about the Portland. So really the team, very multidisciplinary and spans across our network of connections.
Absolutely. And I think it's a good spot to mention too. That's just a small sample of some incredible careers that are available in exploring our oceans. We still have so much work left to do that any students that are tuning in right now, this is a career that there's lots of opportunities, and we've only scratched the surface of some of those with our events. So very cool. Maybe we can visit with Kristen one more time and talk a little bit about some of the marine life that's been found on the Portland and the mystery schooner. Kristen, can you tell us a little bit about some of that marine life?
Yeah, so the most common species that we see on any of the wrecks in Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary are always sponges and anemones. Those are 2 examples of sessile suspension feeders that can really make their home on the wrecks and take advantage of the water currents, because shipwrecks are really valuable habitats even compared to other hard objects like boulders because shipwrecks are just so much larger. For example, on the Portland, we have the walking beam, which is this large structure, almost like an Eiffel Tower, standing above the wreck, which the anemones love. There is a dense cluster of one particular species, plumose anemones, on the very top of that walking beam. Because for them, the game is all about being exposed to fast water currents. Their food is in the current that's coming past them, and so they have to be exposed to as fast of a current as possible, and the higher off the seafloor you are, the faster the current is. We also see a number of fish hanging out around the wrecks, both Portland and the Mystery Schooner. In fact, when we were investigating the Mystery Schooner this summer, there was one cusk that was very, very curious and kept swimming in front of the ROV, I guess doing a little exploration of its own, trying to figure out what is this visitor from another world coming into its habitat. And so we see a lot of Acadian redfish around wrecks. Those are a rockfish. They really like being close to reefs because they have that structure that provides protection from their predators and also nursery areas for their young. And then fish that like to lurk in kind of the nooks and crannies, those cryptic habitats that, it's a hole that extends down below the wood that we wouldn't necessarily see. And so the cusk like to do that, and particularly wolffish. We see a lot of wolffish around the shipwrecks. They like to hang out in those small places. And then occasionally we'll get some cod and pollock swimming around. The pollock really like to eat all the krill that swarm around the shipwrecks. So they're definitely oases of biodiversity that provide critical habitat on the seafloor in the sanctuary.
All right. Well, I think this is the perfect question to wrap up on today. Rachel, first of all, loves the program, but she's also very interested in how we can stay up to date with the case of the Mystery Schooner. So I know there's work to be done after the explorations finish. This is a multi-year project. How can people stay up to date with everything that's happening with these explorations?
That's a great question for Ben, Joe. As Deputy Superintendent, he is the most connected to this Mystery Schooner. So Ben, how can we stay updated on the case of the Mystery Schooner?
So, Hannah, tell me again the question.
Yeah, how can we stay up to date on the case of the Mystery Schooner?
That's a good question, and you can stay up to date by checking back to our website, stellwagen.noaa.gov, and we will put updates there as well as on Facebook.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, I want to start off by saying a huge shout out to everybody involved for making this possible. It was so great the last 3 days to be able to broadcast these events, bring them to students, some who are still at home, some who are just starting their school years, and more who's coming up in September are going to be able to watch these live video broadcasts that we were able to record. So a huge thank you to everybody from the Inner Space Station, from the NOAA's Office of Marine or National Marine Sanctuaries, from the team at Hui, from Evan, Mike, and the rest of the team, putting the ROVs together and getting them into the water. Our historians, our archaeologists, our biologists. Kirsten, thank you so much. It's been a blast, and we're really excited to see where these explorations take you, because the work is just getting started after you get out of the water as well.
Thank you so much, Joe, and I want to second all of that gratitude that you just shared and include all of you, all of the viewers that brought this program really together through your amazing questions. And thank you to Joe for bringing all of you to us to connect. There are more programs coming up, actually just one today. We're going to be returning to the case of the Mystery Schooner at 2:30 across all of our social media platforms. But you can also find more information on this final program on our websites, sanctuaries.noaa.gov and Hui's website as well. As I've mentioned, you can follow along this expedition with the hashtag Stellwagen Deep Dive, and that's across all of our social media channels. So in addition to hearing more about the Mystery Schooner on Stellwagen's website, please follow along on social media. And also, I really hope that you get to tune in again at 2:30 for our final program. Thanks for watching.